Jim Farley dropped a bombshell that has everyone in the car in shock, just when you thought things couldn't get any worse. Don't get me wrong, the market is talking now. Over the past few months, Ford has experienced some significant victories that are truly cause for celebration. But let's face it, they have also encountered a few roadblocks that have left many perplexed. Consider the Mustang, for instance. As you are aware, people adore their Mustangs, and the most recent updates haven't exactly been well received. Fans have been outspoken and not in a positive way, and Ford has also been dealing with a severe truck inventory crisis, which isn't just a minor inconvenience anymore. It's a big headache. However, Ford is already planning to improve things by 2025, and they have some significant intents to correct. Let's start by talking about the Ford F-150, the truck that has been practically the MVP of Ford's lineup for the past few years. But it has been quite the roller coaster ride. In 2020, 2021, and even into part of 2022, Ford was hit hard by global chip shortages and supply chain chaos. It was like trying to bake a cake. It's been, to be honest, a rough few years. What exactly are they planning, and what does this mean for the auto industry? Join us as we discuss this in more detail. However, they ran out of flour, sugar, and eggs all at once, and were unable to obtain the components they required to construct their vehicles that are the outcome of the dealership. When it came to F-150s, lots were practically ghost towns. In fact, seeing one on the lot back then was like finding a front-row concert ticket the day before the show. It hardly ever happened. And you know what happens to prices when something is rare. It was crazy that people were paying far more than they should have to acquire one of these trucks because Skyrocket dealership began imposing enormous markups on them, sometimes adding tens of thousands of dollars to the sticker price. However, the truth is that Ford itself wasn't making any money off of those additional profits. All that sweet markup money was heading directly to the dealerships. Ford wasn't particularly happy about that, so they decided to level the playing field by raising their own prices. It was akin to saying, hey, if anyone's going to profit off these trucks, it might as well be us. Whether they did it out of genuine economic pressure or just plain jealousy of the dealerships, who knows? Either way, it caused a major issue when buyers began to back off. Fast forward to 2023, and everything had completely changed. By now, the F-150 had lost much of its appeal due to its exorbitant prices. And the issue? There wasn't enough trucks. It was an overstock dealership. There were a lot of F-150s merely sitting there. The trucks at the high school dance seemed to have transformed from rock stars to wallflowers as they collected dust. Ford and its dealerships had to quickly change course and begin offering significant discounts to move those trucks. In the middle of 2023, they introduced incentives of $5,000 off on F-150s, and that was just the beginning. There were rows and rows of them waiting for someone to take them home. By 2024, the discounts had increased to as much as $13,000. Additionally, they sweetened the deal with low-interest financing offers, some as low as 1.9% on specific models. The picture isn't entirely positive as we move into 2025. Many dealerships are still holding on to 2024 models that are just sitting around, and the shiny new 2025 trucks are just now beginning to roll onto lots. However, Ford's strategy sort of worked by the end of 2024, as they wrapped up with some of their best F-150 sales numbers in years. That final quarter was a huge win for them. It might take until April, when tax refund season is in full swing, with all these inventories. Let's take a moment to discuss the Ford Ranger, a truck that ought to be killing it, before we witness a rush of buyers eager to buy those leftovers. Perhaps the most beautiful Ranger Ford ever released, the 2024 redesign is a chef's kiss. And it's not like they've set the price too high, at least by 2025 standards. Consider the 4x4 STX trim, which costs about $39,000, and features cloth seats and a sleek, full-screen interior. For a mid-sized truck that looks this good, that's not too bad. The big question, though, is why these bad boys are still sitting on lots at the dealership. Timely dust collection may play a significant role, since most people are still recovering from their holiday spending. January isn't exactly the month when people rush out to buy trucks. Furthermore, let's face it, buying a new car is something that many people put off until they receive their tax refund checks. But Ranger's prices are reasonable for their class. Many consumers still anticipate a mid-sized truck to be less expensive. So Ford's recent troubles are somewhat of the chip shortage era, when dealerships could hardly keep cars on the lot, and it was a seller's market where buyers were paying premiums like there was no tomorrow, is a perfect example of how difficult it can be to balance pricing, production, and demand. Fast forward to the present, and things have completely changed. There are no longer any shortages, and supply chains are operating normally. Prices are rising due to panic, but the catch is that many consumers are still irritated by the exorbitant costs during the chip shortage, which left them with a bad taste in their mouths. And it appears that people are now a little more hesitant to spend large sums of money. Ford's job now is to restore that trust and reassure those doubtful customers. It's a delicate dance, and they're attempting to regain their rhythm. The Ford Bronco is another car in poor condition. When it made its spectacular return, it was like the SUV equivalent of a rock star reunion tour. The hype was insane, and everyone in the neighborhood wanted one. Waiting lists were so long that you had to sign up years in advance to possibly get one. At the time, dealers were having a great time, slapping outrageous markups and watching customers still part with their cash like it was Black Friday. Even people who worked at Ford said, "Take my money so you can drive this." People were surprisingly cool with it. Fast forward to today, and it appears that the Bronco's glory days have come to an end. All those once coveted SUVs are now sitting around like awkward, unnoticed guests at a party. In fact, if you drive past a Ford dealership these days, it's like entering Bronco Town, where rows of unsold Broncos are lounging in parking lots so closely spaced out that they've had to overflow onto nearby grassy patches. However, the four F-150s, particularly the gleaming new 2025 models, are currently the real stars of the lot. Ford is making every effort toe chips on those trucks, and to be honest, they seem to be taking center stage. But let's talk about how the Broncos fell from fame. It was the vehicle that every adventurer dreamed of, but now it's mostly just there. Consider the 2024 Ford Bronco Badlands, which is a true beast on paper with a rugged design that begs to take you to the mountains, and plenty of off-road capability that could likely withstand the end of the world. However, you look at the price tag, which reads $70,650. That is a significant amount of funds for a weekend warrior. Feel right, particularly since you could go to the Jeep dealership and get a Wrangler Rubicon for a lot less money. The Bronco is still a fantastic vehicle. It hasn't suddenly become a flop or anything. It's still the tough, adventure-ready SUV that captured everyone's attention when it made a huge comeback. It has all the off-road capabilities, classic style, and that let's hit the trails vibe that made people fall in love with it. But here's the catch. The game is completely different now. When the Bronco initially appeared on the scene, it was similar to the best ticket-in-town dealerships were unable to keep them in stock because everyone wanted one. But now that demand has subsided, and Ford has been producing these bad boys, like it's still peak Bronco mania, many dealerships are sitting on way more Broncos than they know what to do with them. That once must-have SUV is beginning to look more like a nice-to-have luxury than a must-have purchase. But that's not the whole story. First off, there are some more significant things happening here. It is becoming much more costly due to rising interest rates to borrow money for a new car. And people are holding on to their cash and reconsidering spending a lot of money on a new vehicle because, let's face it, when those monthly payments start to resemble what you would pay for a luxury car, it's enough to make you think twice. Sure, the Bronco is still amazing, and it will definitely kill it on an off-road trip or a weekend getaway. But for many people, it's beginning to feel like the kind of splurge you can at least avoid. For now, Ford's entry into the EV market in the third quarter is another thing that hasn't exactly gone as planned. Just one quarter of 2024 saw Ford's EV division, Model E, report a staggering loss of $1.2 billion. By the way, if you go back in time and look at the first 9 months of the year, those losses skyrocket to an incredible $3.7 billion. Yes, $3.7 billion. Just saying that aloud feels crazy. Hold on, because it gets even worse during those 9 months. Ford sold about 32,000 EVs. Let's take a moment to perform some math. On average, don't worry, I've got your back. They lost roughly $37,500 for each EV they sold. Can you imagine that they are selling electric cars as though they are becoming obsolete and losing a significant amount of money each time that kind of math is done? Indeed, it will keep any CFO up at night, sipping coffee and wondering what went wrong. But here's the thing. This isn't just a Ford problem, it's an industry problem. Everyone is rowing frantically to stay ahead in a market that's suddenly overflowing with rivalry. During rush hour, the EV world, which formerly seemed like the gleaming futuristic frontier, is beginning to resemble a congested freeway. The entire industry is caught up in what he called a global price war, and let me tell you, it's getting more intense by the day. This thing is accelerating faster than a Tesla in ridiculous mode, but it's all happening on a bumpy, congested road with many competitors vying for a piece of the action, according to Ford CEO Jim Farley, who was brutally honest about it. The main problem: everyone is producing EVs because there is simply too much supply and not nearly enough demand. And at this point on paper, the options are endless, which is great for consumers because we're all getting more choices and better deals. However, for automakers, it's a different story. They're desperately trying to stand out in a flooded market, and guess what they're doing to keep up? They're slashing prices left and right. It feels like you can't throw a rock without hitting a new model from another car maker. Whether it's sleek sedans, sporty hatchbacks, or even trucks that look like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie. And believe me, the first thing to suffer when you lower prices to remain competitive is profits. So now, because of this vicious cycle, the entire EV market is suffering. Automakers are cutting prices to stay in business, but this means they aren't making nearly as much money as they had hoped. In fact, some are losing money on each car they sell, and that causes a lot of red ink on the balance sheet. For starters, Ford has a lot of work ahead of them as they attempt to move forward with their electric plans. But the competition is fierce, and the math doesn't add up. And all of the EV companies are essentially competing in the same race, attempting to avoid. The problem is that we're still in the early stages of the electric revolution, so there's a lot of uncertainty about where things will go. Ford isn't backing down though, and they have big plans for their electric future. They're placing big bets on things like the all-electric F-150 Lightning, which is cool in my opinion. But they also face pressure to move from a niche market to mainstream success, which is a huge challenge. Actually, Ford has been discussing their plans to increase production and improve the caliber of their EVs. While cutting expenses sounds fantastic in theory, but when every business in the world is attempting to do the same thing, it's much harder said than done. In addition, the entire EV market is developing at breakneck speed, pun intended. In addition to the competition becoming more intense, technology is developing so swiftly that it's nearly impossible to keep up. Every year, new advancements in battery testing, charging speeds, and range are made, and consumers are growing more astute about what they desire. These days, they don't just buy any EV. Instead, they want one that offers excellent value and is truly. Automakers are constantly under pressure to innovate because it is practical for their daily lives. For many, this means pushing the boundaries of performance and features, but doing so carries the risk of releasing a product that may be ahead of its time, but not quite ready for prime time. Ford is not the only company affected by this EV crisis. Atlantis, the parent company of well-known brands like Ram and Jeep, is also suffering. They have the same issues with overproduction when it comes to their cars. Stack up on the dealer. It's like a never-ending cycle where there are too many cars, not enough buyers, and everyone is trying to undercut each other to stay afloat. If you've ever watched a competitive auction where everyone is bidding lower and lower, you can imagine the situation here, except that nobody is walking away with a good deal. Now, let's focus on one of Ford's most audacious moves, the F-150 Lightning. When Ford made their major foray into the electric pickup market, they were like, okay, this is going to change the game. On paper, it seemed like a brilliant idea, and who could blame them for wanting an electric version of America's favorite truck? With a sleek, futuristic electric drivetrain and a reputation for carrying heavy loads, surviving harsh weather conditions, and making a statement on the road, what could possibly go wrong with the F-150? The undisputed king of trucks in the US, given an electric twist? It turns out that forecasting what consumers truly desire in a new all-electric pickup truck isn't as simple as Ford had hoped. It's a bit like trying to predict which product will be the next big thing on Black Friday. You think you know, but it's a guessing game that could leave you disappointed if you're wrong. In this instance, Ford's gamble with the Lightning isn't exactly working out as the game changer they had envisioned. The F-150 Lightning is cool, with all the bells and whistles you'd expect from a modern EV with the iconic tough-as-nails F-150 style. However, when it comes to actual sales and numbers, the electric F-150 has been a little rocky, intended to be the flagship vehicle of Ford's Model E division. But preliminary reports indicated that things weren't exactly going as planned. In early 2024, Ford's EV sales fell by a significant 26%. That's not a slight decline, it's a full-on nosedive. Ouch. And if you think that's bad, get ready because it gets worse. Ford is not only facing a temporary setback, they're preparing for an FYE loss of between $5 billion and $5.5 billion. Yes, you read correctly. Billions of dollars in the red for a business that has been in business for more than a century. That's a difficult pill to swallow, but the main thing is that it's not just about the Lightning itself. The price tag is the problem. Ford really put a lot of effort into this one. They set a high price for the Lightning, figuring that consumers would be waiting in line to pay for an electric pickup. However, they were unaware of how sensitive the market would be to price increases as consumers tightened their budgets due to rising interest rates and an unstable economy. It suddenly seems less exciting to spend a significant amount of money on an electric vehicle that costs more than its gas-powered equivalent. Purchasing a gaudy new technology is one thing. Device. However, it's a completely different matter when you're making a significant financial commitment for something that might still seem a bit too novel and untested. And let's not forget that the market for electric vehicles is suddenly overflowing with choices. Ford is under pressure to keep up with other automakers who are releasing their own electric trucks, such as Ravon with their R1T and Chevy's Silverado EV, each of which is attempting to outdo the other with glitzy features, longer ranges, and even more technology. At the same time, Ford must make sure that their Lightning is still the one that stands out, but at a somewhat exorbitant price. It's hindering the Lightning's ability to garner the kind of widespread attention Ford had hoped for. Although Ford isn't giving up just yet, they are moving forward with plans to increase production and improve the quality of the Lightning. They are also working to reduce costs, which is crucial if they want to remain competitive in the EV market. That's not all. Ford has put their electric vehicle investments on hold, or, in certain cases, flat out can sell around $12 billion. Yes, you read that right, billion, which is why they have been losing roughly $60,000 on each electric vehicle they sell. That would be equivalent to giving them the keys to a brand new car after purchasing it, and then giving them a huge heap of money over it. When you consider it, it's quite astounding. Customers are still figuring out how to use electric vehicles, so while they are all for saving the environment and avoiding those dreaded gas station stops, they are also apprehensive about things like the high sticker prices. In addition, there is the constant range anxiety, which is the fear that your EV won't make it to grandma's house before running out of juice. And there is the whole, where do I even charge this thing dilemma. Ford may have overestimated the number of individuals willing to spend nearly $100,000 on an electric truck, and that error has left dealerships nationwide with more Lightnings than they can handle. Some dealers have even begun to turn away more shipments because their lots are already full, and the production line isn't working when the trucks aren't leaving the lot, leaving workers in a sort of limbo while they wait for demand or prices to change in their favor. It's like being put on hold for ages and hoping someone will pick you up soon. What is Ford's strategy for 2025? Well, a few major areas will see some changes. To start, the Ford Escape is officially on its way out. Indeed, this year will be the last year that the Escape will be available because the Ford Bronco Sport is essentially replacing it. When you consider this, it doesn't make sense to have both vehicles on the market, especially since the Bronco Sport is selling like crazy and is simply a better vehicle overall. It has a tougher, more rugged look and offers more versatility for day-to-day life, making it ideal for people who want a little more adventure in their ride. Don't worry though, Ford won't be giving up on its large, powerful trucks. Super Duties will continue to operate in the near future, particularly in regions like the South and West where large trucks are essential for everything from ranching to hauling. But let's face it, these trucks are getting more expensive every year. Ford will likely need to offer some heavy discounts to boost sales, similar to what they do with the F-150. This trend appears to be here to stay. As for the Mi, things appear to be going fairly well there. Buyers seem to be drawn to this electric SUV because it's practical and Ford offers some incredible incentives and interest rates that make it an alluring choice. It's probably going to continue to do well, particularly for those who desire a greener option without sacrificing style or functionality, but Ford is still considering the Bronco. Here's the catch. Ford has a lot of 2024 Bronco models on lots at the moment. It might take until the summer of 2025 for those to be sold out. So don't anticipate a major push for the 2025 models until then. In fact, we might still see 2024 Bronco models sitting on dealership lots in the middle of 2025. Considering 2025, Ford has indicated that it intends to make some adjustments, such as updating the, if you've been eyeing an F-150 or Ranger, now might be a great time to get a deal. There are still some good trucks out there, and Ford might be offering discounts to move inventory. But don't wait until April. Mustang is adjusting their pricing strategy to better match what people are actually willing to pay and better align with what consumers are asking for. Trucks may become more difficult to locate and prices may increase as a result of those lovely tax refunds. The path ahead. What does farming and John Deere's future hold then? Farming's future is at a turning point. The promise of efficiency, innovation, and technology is on the one hand. Conversely, the need for independence, autonomy, and equity. The task for John Deere is obvious. Adjust to the needs of a shifting market, or risk losing its position as the leading agricultural sector. Although the company's restrictive policies may have benefited its short-term financial objectives, they have also caused a rift with its loyal clientele. Although it won't be simple, trust can be restored. John Deere could restore its standing as a reliable farming partner by supporting the right-to-repair movement and giving farmers' needs top priority. The industry is changing overall at the same time. Food production, harvesting, and distribution are changing as a result of emerging technologies like open-source hardware, blockchain for supply chain transparency, and sustainable farming methods. These developments give businesses the chance to reflect the ideals of contemporary farmers, values based on cooperation, equity, and flexibility. The future is both bright and uncertain for farmers. The fight is far from over, even though the right-to-repair movement is making headway. The shift to a more equitable agricultural system will take time, and corporate resistance is still very strong. However, one thing is for sure. Farmers will no longer remain silent. The discourse has been altered by their altercation, and the consequences will last for many years. A new era in farming is emerging, marking the end of unbridled corporate control. One question still stands as we consider this journey. How will each of us contribute to the direction of farming going forward? How do you feel about the movement for the right to repair? Do you believe that John Deere ought to relinquish control and give farmers the ability to regain command of their machinery? Or do you think their worries about intellectual property and safety are legitimate? We would love to hear your opinions, so please share them in the comments section below.